I'll never forget the sound the fellowship hall made when the room went dead still, like every breath got sucked backward at the same time. It was the annual Marriage Refresher Seminar at St. Mark's Lutheran in Kettering, Ohio, and my wife, Evelyn, was standing up front smiling like she was the patron saint of lifelong devotion. Half the congregation was there, old friends from the VFW neighbors, from Lincoln Park, folks I'd known since the Delphi plant days. And then the man in the navy blazer walked right down the center aisle, boots echoing on that thin church carpet. Evelyn Reynolds. She turned, still smiling, until she saw the envelope in his hand. "You've been served," he said loud enough to bounce off the coffee urns in the back. A ripple went through the room, gasping whispers, somebody's chair scraping across the floor. Evelyn just froze, staring at the divorce petition like she couldn't read her own name. And that's when I stepped forward, remote in my hand, the projector behind me, lighting up the screen with the first motel photo. Yeah, that was the moment everything broke and everything started to make sense. But that wasn't where the story really started. It started 2 weeks after our 35th anniversary. 6:15 in the morning, cool September air drifting in through the kitchen window. I just set the Mr. Coffee to brew when the landline rang, still have the old thing hanging on the wall, avocado green from the 70s. Only a handful of people ever call it anymore. I picked up, "Tom Reynolds." A shaky breath on the other end. "Tom, it's Diane, can you talk?" Diane, Evelyn's best friend for over 30 years. The woman who sat beside her at every church potluck, every choir practice, every funeral. I'd never heard her sound like that. Tight, scared, almost whispering. "Tom, please listen carefully," she said. "I found something awful. You need to meet me, right away. And whatever you do, don't tell Evelyn you're coming." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about, Diane?" "I can't say it over the phone. Meet me at the Bob Evans on Far Hills, back booth. Come alone." She paused. "And Tom, brace yourself. If you've ever wondered how well you truly know the person sleeping next to you, stay with me. Because that morning at Bob Evans, it cracked my life wide open. I'm Tom Reynolds, 63 years old, born and raised right here in Montgomery County. I spent 37 years at the old Delphi plant in Moraine, machining engine brackets, breathing in coolant mist, and listening to the same AM radio station every night shift until the place finally shut down. I walked out with a pension, a bad knee, and more friends in the UAW than I can count. Evelyn, my wife, she's 60 now, works part-time as a teller at Wright Pat Credit Union over on Wilmington Pike. Folks always liked her. She had that sort of bright, chirpy voice that made people think she was warm, even when she wasn't. We met at a church picnic back in '84. Married in '88 at St. Mark's Lutheran with the reception in the fellowship hall, egg salad, ham, rolls, lemonade in those big orange coolers. We raised 2 kids in our little 3-bedroom on Wilshire Boulevard. Matt's 34 now, software something or other in Columbus. Sarah's 31, living in Cincinnati where she works for a dental office. They both grew fast, moved out fast, and built good lives. I'm proud of them. I don't call as much as I should, but I go up when they need something fixed. That's just how dads around here do it. Since retiring, I keep a simple rhythm bingo on Thursdays at VFW Post 759, a cup of coffee after services on Sundays, yard work on Tuesdays, because the trash pickup's Wednesday. I grill on the back porch, watch the Reds, even though they break my heart every year, and take quiet evening walks down the block when the cicadas start humming. 2 weeks before everything happened, Evelyn and I hit Olive Garden for our 35th anniversary. Nothing fancy, we're not fancy people. I bought her a silver necklace from Kohl's. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said she loved it. Said I'd always known how to make her feel cared for. I remember feeling warm all over, like maybe we were settling in for the comfortable part of life, the easy part. Then right after dessert, she told me she needed to run back to St. Mark's to help set up choir music for Sunday service. She kissed my forehead, thanked me again, and hurried out into the parking lot. I watched her taillights disappear onto Wilmington Pike, thinking I'd done a good job as a husband that night. Funny thing about life, you don't always see the cracks until the whole wall caves in. The first crack didn't come with fireworks. It came with a bank statement. I was sitting at the kitchen table one Tuesday morning, the sun barely up over the maple trees in our backyard, when I noticed a couple of odd charges on our joint checking account. Lucky Star Lounge in downtown Dayton, and a Marriott room charge. I thought maybe Sarah had used our card by accident. She'd done that once before. But when I asked Evelyn about it that night, she didn't blink. "Oh, that's just from girls' night," she said, tossing her purse onto the counter. "Diane and I went out for a few drinks, and we got a little tipsy, so we grabbed a hotel room to be safe. You don't want me driving drunk, do you?" I stood there staring at her. "Since when do you drink enough to need a hotel room?" She laughed too loud too fast. "Oh, Tom, don't be dramatic. You act like you've never heard of two women having fun." Then she walked off to the bathroom humming as she shut the door. That should have been enough to make me dig deeper. But after 35 years of marriage, you train yourself to explain things away, to trust, to assume the best. Then came the next crack. At the annual spaghetti dinner at the VFW, Evelyn sat at the table with a couple of my old union buddies. She'd had a glass or two of boxed red wine, and she got chatty, mean chatty. "Tom here," she said, patting my shoulder like I was a dog. "He watches the Weather Channel like it's a thriller movie. And Fox News Lord, if I stepped away for good, he'd probably forget how to turn the oven on. Isn't that right, honey?" The guys chuckled awkwardly. I forced a smile, but my chest tightened. I'd served with those men, worked overtime beside them, sweated through shutdown weeks with them. Now my wife, my partner, was cracking jokes like I was some helpless old coot she was stuck with. And it didn't stop there. Every few days, she'd bring up buying a new car. For my safety, she'd say, brushing her hand along the counter like she was wiping away invisible dust. Something newer, something reliable. We just paid off her Subaru last year. When I suggested waiting a little, she tilted her head and gave that tight smile of hers. "Tom, that GM pension of yours isn't going anywhere when you're gone. Better to use it while you're still here." I blinked. "What do you mean, gone?" "Oh, don't be sensitive. I just mean, we're not getting younger. You should think about what happens after." Then the paperwork started showing up. Envelopes from the insurance office, brochures about retirement planning, a durable power of attorney form printed off the internet just to look over together. "Evelyn," I said one night as she slid the papers across the table, "why are we always talking about what happens if something happens to me? Why not if something happens to us?" She sighed one of those deep theatrical sighs that made me feel like a nuisance. "Tom, be reasonable. Women tend to live longer. Everyone knows that. We should make sure things are in both our names so you don't leave me with a mess." A mess. That word rattled around in my head for days. On Sunday after church, she pulled me aside by the fellowship hall coffee table. "Tom, really," she whispered, glancing around to make sure nobody was listening. "If something happened to you first, I can't deal with all that paperwork alone. I need the house in both names. I need access to all accounts. It's the smart thing." But the thing was, everything already was in both names except my pension and IRA. I told her I wanted time to think. She stiffened. Her whole expression dropped into this cold, flat stare I'd never seen before. "Well," she said, "I just hope you're thinking about our future and not clinging to control." Control. The word sliced right through me. It was like suddenly in the middle of an ordinary Sunday, I realized I'd been reduced to a signature she needed, a document she wanted, a key to a life she was building somewhere else. And yet, I still didn't see the whole picture. Not until Diane called that morning. Bob Evans on Far Hills always smells the same black coffee bacon grease and that warm biscuit smell that clings to your clothes for the rest of the day. Normally it's comforting. That morning it wasn't. It made my stomach turn. Diane was already in the back booth when I walked in. She wasn't her usual cheerful self. No makeup, eyes puffy, hands wrapped tight around a mug that had long gone cold. "Tom," she said, sliding out just enough for me to sit, "I'm so sorry you're here right now." My heart started knocking against my ribs. "Diane, what's going on?" She didn't answer. She just unlocked her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward me. At first, my brain wouldn't register what I was seeing. It looked like Evelyn, but my mind refused to accept it. Then everything sharpened. There she was, my wife of 35 years, pressed up against a tall, gray-haired man outside the Red Roof Inn off I-75. The same night as our anniversary, same necklace I'd given her just hours before shining around her neck. Time-stamped, location tag. Her hands on his shoulders, his mouth on hers, her smiling like she'd been waiting for him all night. I felt something in my chest tear not loudly, quiet, like fabric fraying. "Diane, what is this?" How did you? There's more, she whispered. She opened her photo album, screenshots, dozens. Text messages from Evelyn to Roger. Roger, a man I'd never heard of. The first screenshot was dated the night of our anniversary. Tom swallowed the whole act Olive Garden flowers necklace. I told him I'm heading to church to set up music. Heading to Red Roof now. Roger's already here. I deserve this. I stared at the words until they blurred. Deserve this. Like I was a burden, a joke. Something she'd put up with, not someone she'd build a life with. Diane, why are you showing me this? Why you? She set the phone down and looked at me. Really looked at me. Tom, I borrowed Evelyn's phone last week to take pictures of the choir bake sale table. She forgot to close her messages. I didn't go snooping at first, but I saw Roger's name. I saw too much to unsee. I swallowed hard. You could have just ignored it. Her voice cracked. I couldn't. Not on your anniversary. Not after watching you work yourself half to death for that woman. I've known you both for 30 years. I couldn't stay quiet. The waitress came by with a coffee pot. I didn't even look up. Refill. No, Diane said quickly. We're good. The waitress walked away. I stared at the photos one more time, though. Every part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room. My voice felt far away when I spoke. So she wasn't at church that night. No, Tom, she wasn't. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The restaurant noise faded into a dull hum, clinking plates, distant chatter silverware, scraping ceramic. It felt like I was floating outside my own life, watching it crack open. And God help me. Part of me hoped that this betrayal was the worst of it. But it wasn't. It wasn't even close. Diane kept glancing around the restaurant like someone might overhear us, even though the breakfast crowd was mostly retirees arguing about the Bengals or reading the Dayton Daily News. Finally, she took a long breath, folded her hands on the table, and looked me straight in the eyes. Tom, the cheating isn't the part that scared me. My throat tightened. What do you mean? She lowered her voice even more. I go to the Wednesday ladies' Bible study with Evelyn. You know that. Well, 2 weeks ago, she started bragging about taking control of her future. At first, I thought she meant retirement planning or something ordinary. But then she started talking about you. My heart started pounding again. What did she say about me? Diane hesitated, then pulled another screenshot from her purse, printed, not digital. She slid it over slowly, like handing me a loaded weapon. She'd been texting Roger during Bible study. I only caught part of it before she hid her phone, but I saw enough. I picked up the paper, 3 messages. From Evelyn. Once the house is refinanced, and in both our names, I'll get Tom to sign the POA. Doctor said cognitive decline cases are easy to document if you know what to say. After that, I'll move him into the East Dayton memory place, and Roger and I can finally leave. My hands went cold. East Dayton memory place. The cheapest, most run-down home in the county, half the rooms smell like bleach and sadness. We'd visited years ago when my old neighbor Earl got placed there by his daughter. Evelyn swore she'd never do that to me. She said it so convincingly that I believed her. Diane kept talking, but her words felt muffled, like I was underwater. She's been pushing you to sign the durable power of attorney because once that's in place, she could move you anywhere without your consent. She even joked about how you act confused sometimes, like it was a strategy. I looked up sharply. A strategy. Diane nodded, tears in her eyes. She said, Tom's getting easier to manage. Once the doctor checks the right box, it'll all fall into place. My stomach twisted. Memories flashed, moments that suddenly didn't feel harmless anymore. Like when Evelyn repeated a story I'd told her earlier and said, You already told me that, honey. See, you're forgetting things. Or when she'd corrected me sharply in front of friends, Tom, we already discussed this. You must be losing track again. Or when she'd hidden my reading glasses and said, You're getting scatterbrained. It happens at your age. Little jabs, little nudges, little seeds. Planting a narrative. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to push the dizziness back. Why would she do this to me? Diane's voice softened. She wants a new life with Roger. She told the ladies group she deserves a fresh start. She just needs access to your house, your pension, everything. The biscuit smell in Bob Evans suddenly felt suffocating. I stared at the scratches on the wooden table, at Diane's trembling hands, at the printed screenshot that felt like a death certificate for the marriage I thought I had. I finally whispered she was planning on putting me away. Diane didn't say yes. She didn't have to. The silence did it for her. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Not anger, not grief, but clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. If Evelyn wanted to play a long game, she didn't realize I could play one too. I didn't go home right away after leaving Bob Evans. I drove around Kettering for almost an hour down Stroop Road, past the high school, past the park where Matt used to play Little League. The trees were just starting to turn those first yellow edges of fall, brushing against the leaves. It all looked normal, peaceful, familiar. But nothing in my life felt familiar anymore. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot behind the Montgomery County Courthouse. I didn't even plan it. My hands just turned the wheel like my body knew where I needed to be before my brain did. Mark Hastings' law office was across the street, brick building, second floor, the kind of place where the blinds are always half drawn and the secretary knows every type of probate form by memory. He handled my mother's estate years back. Honest man, quiet talker, the type who weighs his words before saying them. I walked in without an appointment. His receptionist, Bonnie, looked up over her glasses. "Tom Reynolds, everything all right?" "No," I said simply. "I need to see Mark." 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from him in his office, hands clasped so tight my knuckles ached. Mark set his pen down and leaned forward. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. Not the affair, not yet, just the part that mattered legally. The pressure to sign a durable power of attorney, the push to retitle the house, the hints about cognitive decline, the sudden interest in medical directives. Mark didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't even look surprised. When I finished, he sighed softly. "Tom, I've seen this before." My stomach flipped. "You have?" He nodded. "A spouse gets tired, finds someone else, wants out but wants the assets too. You're vulnerable because you trust her and because you've had a long marriage. People use that." I swallowed hard. "What can I do?" Mark folded his hands. "You can protect yourself immediately, quietly." He explained it step by step, calm, measured, like guiding a man down a narrow path through dark woods. A revocable living trust with me as the sole trustee. The house transferred into the trust. My pension and IRA beneficiaries changed. Separate accounts opened in my name alone. A financial firewall she couldn't cross. Not with charm, not with lies, not with a forged signature or a doctor's note. "And Tom," he said, looking me dead in the eye, "you must not sign anything she puts in front of you. Not a Post-it note, not a grocery list, nothing." I nodded slowly. "Can you help me do this?" "I can," he said, "but you'll have to be patient, strategic, and very, very quiet." I sat back, letting the weight of his words settle. Quiet, patient, strategic. 3 things I'd been all my life as a machinist. I stood and shook his hand. "Let's start." And we did. Over the next 3 weeks, I opened new accounts, filed trust documents, changed every beneficiary, documented every strange comment Evelyn made, recorded every conversation where she pushed papers toward me, and little by little, the ground she thought she owned beneath my feet began shifting, not under me, but under her. Diane stayed close, passing along anything Evelyn bragged about. Every text, every plan, every line rehearsed for the ladies' group. Evelyn thought she was tightening a noose around my future. She didn't realize I was gathering rope of my own. The strange thing about living with someone who's plotting against you is how normal the days still look on the surface. The mail keeps coming. The trash goes out on Wednesdays. The neighbors wave when they mow their lawns. Life moves the same way it always has, except you're suddenly aware of every tiny crack in the floorboard, every shift in someone's tone, every shadow where something ugly might be hiding. For the next couple of weeks, I played the part Evelyn expected of me, the aging husband who was a little slow these days. I let her believe I was confused. I let her think she was the one in control. Meanwhile, I recorded everything on my phone discreetly tucked into my flannel chest pocket. It started the following Monday evening. She came into the living room holding a thick packet of papers. "Tom," she said sweetly, "could you look over these?" I muted the TV. "What is it?" "Oh, just some estate planning stuff. I printed it from an online legal service. We should really get our affairs in order, you know." I took the papers from her, The top page read, "Durable power of attorney, exactly what Mark warned me about." I flipped through them, slowly, keeping my hand steady. "Huh," I said in my best confused old man voice. "So, this would let you handle things if I got sick." She beamed like a teacher whose student finally caught up. "Yes, honey, and I'd only use it to help you, only if you needed it." I tapped the spot where my signature would go. "What's this line?" "That's just standard." And this part here, about decision-making authority. "You don't need to read all that, Tom. It's just the usual legal jargon." She placed her hand over mine. "You trust me, don't you? Once upon a time, I would have signed without blinking, but that man was gone." I handed the papers back gently. "Let me sleep on it." Her smile flickered just a second, but enough to see the frustration underneath. "Okay, but don't take too long." She walked down the hall, the papers clutched tight at her side. The next morning, she brought it up again at breakfast. "You know, Tom, if something happened to you tomorrow, I'd be stuck. Did you think about the papers?" "Still thinking," I said. She exhaled sharply, stirring her coffee a little too hard. "It shouldn't be that big of a decision." I smiled kindly, "But it is." That's when I saw it, the first crack in her mask. A flicker of annoyance, a flash of calculation. And I recorded all of it. 3 nights later, I caught her on the phone with Sarah. I was in the hallway pretending to organize the coat closet, but really I was holding my phone out of sight recording. "Mom, why are you pushing this stuff so hard?" Sarah asked. "Because your father is slipping," Evelyn said. "He forgets conversations, he repeats himself, he moves slower. I'm the only one here to make sure things don't fall apart." I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing quietly, bitterly. Slipping, repeating myself. Funny how convenient those accusations were when she'd been the one planting them. Later that week, Evelyn told Matt the same story, slightly altered, as though she was refining her script. "I'm worried about your father," she said. "He's stubborn, won't sign the POA. He gets confused in the evenings. I'm doing all the heavy lifting." Heavy lifting. That night I rewound the recording and listened twice, then forwarded it to my attorney. Mark emailed back within minutes. "Keep gathering this. It's exactly what we need." Meanwhile, Diane kept feeding me information. She'd call in hushed tones while standing in the back of Kroger or sitting in her car outside St. Mark's choir practice. I heard Evelyn talking to Barb from the Bible study, she whispered one Wednesday. She said, "Tom's almost ready. He's getting easier to direct. He'll sign soon." Another night. She told the ladies she and Roger have been looking at condos in Naples online. She said, "Once everything is in place, I'm out of here so fast it'll leave scorch marks." Every piece of gossip hit like a jab to the ribs, but each one hardened me further. Every lie she told about me gave my attorney more ammunition. One Friday morning, I woke to the sound of rustling papers in the kitchen. Evelyn was sitting at the table with a notebook and a stack of forms. She didn't see me standing in the doorway. "Once I get Tom to sign," she murmured to herself, "the doctor can check mild cognitive decline. Just need to emphasize the right things." My chest tightened. She was rehearsing, strategizing, building her case like a prosecutor preparing a trial. I stepped into the room. "What's all that?" She jumped, then forced a smile. "Oh, just organizing some things. You startled me." "A lot of paperwork," I said, keeping my tone mild. "Just being proactive," she replied. "You know me." I did know her, just not the version standing in front of me. 2 days later, she tried again. "Tom," she said, leaning against the doorframe of my office, "can we sit down tonight and look over those forms? Maybe tomorrow." Her smile vanished this time. "We need to sign them, Tom." "We," I repeated. "Yes, we. This affects both of us." I set down my screwdriver. "Funny. You keep saying that, but all the forms are about what happens if something happens to me. What about if something happens to you?" She stiffened. "Women live longer. Everyone knows that." "Not always," I said evenly. "Life doesn't follow statistics." "Don't be stubborn." I wiped my hands on a rag, letting the silence hang just a little too long. "I'm not being stubborn, Ev. I just want to understand what I'm signing." For a second, I swear she looked at me like a chess opponent, realizing their plan wasn't unfolding cleanly. She left the room abruptly. I hit the stop button on my phone. Another recording saved. By the end of the 3rd week, I had recordings of her lies, recordings of her manipulation, recordings of her attempts to box me into signing, screenshots Diane passed along, and my trust fully secured with every asset moved out of her reach. Evelyn thought she was building a case against my mind, but I was building a case against her soul. All I needed was the right moment to lay it out, and it would come sooner than she ever expected. I waited for the right moment. Not the perfect moment, those don't exist in real life, but the right one. That chance came on a cool, quiet Saturday evening, early October. Leaves just starting to fall across the yard, crunching underfoot when I stepped outside to sweep the porch. Evelyn was in the kitchen, bustling around, humming like she didn't have a care in the world. She'd planned a family catch-up dinner, which surprised me since she rarely suggested having the kids over unless she wanted something. But I didn't question it. I let her think she was orchestrating the evening. Matt pulled into the driveway first, his silver Ford Fusion, making that familiar rattle. He hugged me when he came inside tight, like he hadn't realized how much he'd needed it until that moment. Sarah arrived a few minutes later, still in her scrubs from work, hair pulled back in a messy bun. They both looked tired and a little tense, probably because Evelyn had already told them I was slipping. Diane arrived last, carrying a small casserole she didn't need to bring but did anyway. When she stepped inside, Evelyn's cheerful expression faltered just a hair, like she hadn't expected Diane to show up and wasn't thrilled she had. "Oh, Diane, I didn't know you were joining us," Evelyn said, smoothing her hair, even though it wasn't out of place. "Tom invited me," Diane replied simply. "Hope that's all right." "Oh, of course," Evelyn said, but her smile was thin, brittle. We all sat around the dining room table, the same table we'd used for every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every family celebration. The overhead light hummed softly, casting a warm glow on the faces of the people I loved most. Evelyn took her seat at the head of the table, like she always did, and clasped her hands together. "Well," she said brightly before we dig in, "I just want to say how grateful I am for this family. And, kids, I know you've noticed your dad hasn't been himself lately, but we're working on it, aren't we, honey?" Every eye turned toward me. My heart thudded once, heavy and slow, before settling into something calm, steady. I reached into my flannel pocket and placed a plain manila envelope in the center of the table. "Before we talk about my memory," I said softly, "I think we should all take a look at this." Evelyn's smile froze. "Tom, what is that?" I didn't answer. I slid the envelope toward Matt. "Go ahead, open it." He glanced at Sarah, then at me, then pulled out the stack of photos and printed screenshots. I watched his eyes widen, watched the color drain from his face as he flipped through them. What is this?" he whispered. Sarah leaned over his shoulder. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Mom." Evelyn shot to her feet. "Diane," she snapped, "you planted this. You're trying to turn them against me." Diane didn't even flinch. "I didn't plant anything, Ev. You wrote every word. You did everything in those photos." "Lies," Evelyn demanded, voice cracking. "Tom, how could you bring this garbage into our home?" I finally looked at her, really looked at her. "Ev," I said quietly, "I didn't bring garbage into this home. You did. I just finally put it in the light." Matt stood abruptly, chair scraping. "Mom, is this real? You really did this to Dad?" Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again, soundless. I pushed my chair back and stood. "I wanted the kids to see," I said, "that I'm not confused. I'm not losing my memory, and I'm not imagining what you've been doing behind my back." Silence thickened the air, heavy, suffocating. The whole room felt like it shifted, like a balance that had been tilted for years suddenly snapped upright. Evelyn's eyes darted around the table, searching desperately for someone, anyone, to take her side. No one did. Not even her. The showdown didn't happen in my living room. It didn't happen over a quiet coffee or in a lawyer's office. It happened in the most public, uncomfortable, inescapable place imaginable for a woman like Evelyn. St. Mark's Lutheran Church Fellowship Hall, a place she considered her kingdom. It was the second Saturday of October, our church's annual marriage refresher seminar. Older couples came for coffee muffins and Bible verses about kindness and communication. Evelyn had volunteered to decorate the hall weeks before, long before she knew the ground was shifting under her feet. When I walked in, the fellowship hall looked like a Hallmark movie: fall garlands, fake maple leaves, orange tablecloths, little pumpkins with Bible verses written in cursive. I spotted Evelyn by the table of name tags, fluttering around like the perfect pastor's helper. "Tom," she said brightly, waving me over like nothing had happened 2 weeks earlier at dinner. "Sit with me today, okay?" I nodded once, didn't say a word. People filled the seats quickly. Church couples we'd known for decades. Pastor Williams stood at the front with his binder, adjusting his glasses. Everyone chatted, sipped Folger's coffee, waited for the seminar to begin. Evelyn leaned over and whispered loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear. "I'm so glad you came, honey. Maybe this will help you with all the stress lately." I looked at her right in the eyes. She didn't see the trap, not even close. The pastor welcomed everyone, then invited volunteers to share short reflections about marriage. Evelyn's hand shot up before he even finished the sentence. She walked to the front of the room with the confidence of a woman who truly believed she'd never be caught. She smoothed her blouse, clasped her hands, and smiled with fake humility. Marriage, she began, is about caring for each other, especially when minds and bodies start to fail. My stomach clenched, but not with fear, with something colder. She kept going, milking the room for sympathy. "And sometimes," she said, "you have to make decisions for your spouse when they start forgetting things. Missing appointments, getting confused." A few people nodded. Evelyn looked straight at me, voice soft and solemn. "That's what love looks like." When she stepped back toward our table, I raised my hand. "Pastor," I said, loud enough for the whole hall, "may I give a testimony too?" Evelyn froze mid-step. She knew that tone. She'd heard it once before at the dinner table. Pastor Williams smiled gently. "Of course, Tom." I stood and walked to the front. The fellowship hall fell quiet. Too quiet. On the table behind the podium sat a laptop connected to the hall's big TV. I'd placed it there 20 minutes earlier, disguised among hymn printing supplies. I clicked a key. The TV lit up. Photo number 1, Evelyn and Roger kissing behind the Red Roof Inn. Time-stamped, clear as day. Gasps broke the silence. Photo number 2, them entering a room together. Photo number 3, screenshot of Evelyn's text. "Once the house is refinanced and Tom's in memory care, I'm gone." Murmurs spread like fire. I turned to Evelyn. She was pale, stone pale. "Ev," I said softly, "I remember every overtime shift I worked at Delphi. I remember every mortgage payment. Every winter we patched this marriage together. And I remember every lie you told the past 6 months." She took a shaky step forward. "Tom, please, turn it off, please." But it wasn't over. Footsteps echoed from the back of the hall. A man in a navy suit walked straight down the center aisle. "Evelyn Reynolds," he called. She turned slowly. The man handed her a thick envelope. "You've been served. Divorce petition, Montgomery County Court." Someone dropped a muffin. Somebody else whispered, "Lord have mercy." Evelyn stared at the envelope like it was ticking. Then she looked at me, tears spilling, mascara streaking. You destroyed me." I shook my head. "No, Evelyn, I just stopped you." The entire fellowship hall watched her crumble, watched the mask she'd worn for decades collapse into dust. And somewhere behind me, I swear I heard Diane exhale for the first time in weeks. The fallout didn't happen overnight. It never does not after a 35-year marriage, and the kind of betrayal that rots a man from the inside out. But the dust did settle, and when it did, the picture was clearer than I expected. 4 months after that day in the fellowship hall, the divorce became final. No drawn-out drama, no screaming matches, no late-night phone calls. Evelyn's attorney tried a few tricks implying marital confusion, suggesting I was emotionally unstable, but the evidence spoke louder than any courtroom theatrics. The trust protected everything that mattered. My pension, my house in Kettering, the savings from 40 years of busted knuckles at the Delphi plant. Evelyn walked away with far less than she'd planned. No Naples condo, no IRA access, no power of attorney, no claim on the house she tried to take from under me. She moved into a 1-bedroom place near the green. I drove past it once months later, just to see. A tired building paint peeling, the kind of place 2 railroad tracks hum behind. She was out front smoking a cigarette, something she'd sworn she quit. She didn't see me. I didn't honk. I just kept driving. My life, meanwhile, got quieter. Better. My days started returning to the rhythm I'd forgotten I loved, waking up at 6:15, brewing a plain pot of coffee in the kitchen that echoed, now empty but peaceful. I fixed the back deck with Matt one Saturday morning. We hammered boards in silence, then talked about the Buckeyes, about his girlfriend, about nothing important and everything that mattered. Sarah dropped by more often, sometimes with takeout, sometimes just to sit in the living room and talk about her nursing shifts. She apologized once for believing her mother's story about my memory problems. I told her the truth. It wasn't your fault. People hide things when they want to. I still went to Thursday bingo at VFW Post 759. Still sat at the same table under the neon Bud Light sign. The guys didn't pry, they just nudged me, joked that I ought to enjoy my bachelor freedom. And maybe in a small way, I did. As winter crept in, I started repairing little things around the house. I'd put off door hinges, loose siding the leaky faucet Evelyn always told me I was fixing wrong. The quiet between each sound of the wrench or hammer wasn't lonely. It was mine. And Diane, well, she and I kept meeting at Bob Evans every so often. Two old friends. Sometimes she brought newspaper clippings. Sometimes she brought cinnamon rolls. Sometimes she didn't bring anything but conversation. We didn't rush it. We didn't name it. We just let it be what it was. Two people who walked through fire and came out standing. The kids noticed I smiled more. I noticed I breathed easier. One night, sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee cooling in my hands, I realized something. Growing older doesn't always mean losing pieces of your life. Sometimes it means finally letting go of the things that were breaking you. And that kind of freedom, you can't buy. You can only earn. I didn't expect peace to feel this way. Not loud, not triumphant, just steady like a front porch light left on in the quiet, guiding you home after a long road you never planned to walk. It's funny. For 35 years, I thought strength meant holding a family together no matter what. Working overtime, swallowing my pride. Patch the seams, don't complain, keep the roof standing. That's what men of my generation were raised to believe. But sometimes strength is the opposite. Sometimes it's letting the roof cave in when you finally realize you're the only one holding it up. These days I stop by St. Mark's for Sunday service, sit in the middle pew instead of our old spot near the aisle. Folks don't look at me with pity anymore. They look at me with something closer to respect. Pastor Williams shook my hand last week and said, "Tom, you've weathered a storm most men never see coming." I didn't have the heart to tell him that the storm had been brewing for years. I still fix things for neighbors now, and then gutters, garage doors, little repairs I enjoy doing. Not because someone demands it, because I choose to. There's a difference I learned, a big one. And every once in a while I'll see Evelyn's car around town, at the grocery store, in a parking lot. Once outside Target, she spotted me and paused like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. She just got in her car and drove off. I didn't feel anger, didn't feel triumph, didn't feel much at all. Some things end because they're supposed to. Some roads split where they must. And when you finally accept that, life gets lighter. Not long ago, I met Diane again at Bob Evans, the same booth, the same coffee mugs with little chips along the rim. We talked about her grandkids. She asked about my tomatoes, which were somehow surviving another Ohio winter. And before we left, she touched my arm and said, "Tom, you did the right thing." For the first time in a long time, I believed it. So if you're listening to this, maybe alone in your living room, maybe driving home after a long shift, maybe wondering if you're the only one going through something heavy, I want you to hear me. You're not weak for wanting peace. You're not selfish for protecting what's yours. And you're never too old to take your life back. If my story reminded you of something you've lived through, or something you finally walked away from, I'd be honored if you shared it in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you want more real stories, stories where everyday people our age stop being victims and start standing tall, go ahead and subscribe to Top 10 Revenge. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself, and remember, peace isn't given, it's claimed.